Hello, YouTube. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. And my apologies, I'm 3 minutes late. I got caught up in doing some research and very tired. I did a heck of a lot of surfing today. You know, when the waves come in Florida, you got to make the best of it because they don't come all that often. So I did some surfing and then I slept and then I'm an old man, so I got to recover from all that physical activity. So today I'm going to be just talking to you about why I believe the solar flash is necessary in order to have open extraterrestrial contact. And I want to talk some more about the misconception around extraterrestrials. The misconception is gargantuanly huge. And I'm talking about myself as well. You know, I only knew what I knew, before I started seeking out interaction with them. And by interacting with them, I found out they weren't anything like what I expected. And so, as you know, we have a world that is run by a cabal of extremely powerful, very rich people whose main goal is to completely take over the earth and, of course, line their pockets, use the human population as indentured servants and slaves. They are seeking to basically dehumanize and computerize human beings in every single way you can possibly imagine, including, with all the recent healthcare drug company nonsense that's been going on for the past, 2-3 years. But we've got the metaverse that is literally seeking to take over the workplace. And the World Economic Forum that says you will own nothing and you will be happy. You will rent where you live and everything that you need will be delivered to you by drone. That's the way they want. They want everybody stuck inside. And then you have the metaverse, which will then allow these people who are stuck inside their little cubicles to go to work. And the metaverse is trying to get people to go to work virtually. So all of the stuff that's happened the past couple of years has been to set us up so we get used to that. It's trying to disconnect you from the natural world. It's trying to disconnect you from other people. These metaverse ads pop up and, whatever, all different places. But one that really shocked me was the metaverse was trying to promote themselves in this way where they were going to unite people from all over the world in bicycle racing. And so it was a bicycle racer from Africa who was, and you see him riding around in these beautiful outdoor places in Africa. And then he's, on a bicycle treadmill and he's hooked up and he's got the virtual reality thing going on. And supposedly he's now racing in the metaverse against everybody else in the world. And it's a way of bringing everybody together. And it's not. It's a way of controlling you. What the deep state wants is to control you physically. They want to be able to completely control where you are at all times. They want to control you mentally, emotionally, psychologically, financially, every other way. They're messing around with our DNA. They're messing around, And by the way, everybody listening to me, you need to know that ever since the first abduction event, that became public, back in 1964, I believe it was, which was the Betty and Barney Hill case. From that moment on, and probably before, every single abduction event is human orchestrated. And so everything you think you know about aliens has been given to you by humans. And humans have invented the whole alien phenomenon. So I'm using the word alien specifically. And so anytime that you're abducted forcibly, anytime that you are experimented on, anytime that you're, because in every abduction event, you've got pretty much the same thing going on. Somebody is physically disabled. They go into some catatonic state where they're incapable of moving. They go through a scenario where there are visions that are input into their brain via some electromagnetic technology that humans have had for a long time, which you haven't known about. They are sexually abused and experimented on. Sexual and reproductive tissues and fluids have been taken. The anal probes, all of that stuff, that's humans. So the idea that extraterrestrials are these beings, these three-dimensional beings that come in three-dimensional ships, and happen to have all of this strange technology. And at the same time, you hear these people who have been abducted and the way they describe the insides of these ships, including, Whitley Strieber, they talk about it being dirty and smelly, and these aliens, they have to use these really sharp, crude tools to slice into you. They put tracking devices that are really poorly made that your body rejects, and it's and people who go through it, they're severely traumatized. This is what you've been told aliens are, and it is completely, totally human-made. It is not false. It's a very real thing. The aliens themselves are robots, androids. They have AI consciousness in them. Everybody that interacts with them will say that they will force thoughts into your brain and pictures into your brain. If you touch them, they don't feel organic. They don't feel like they have life. They feel like robots. And some of them will even say there are robots in the ships. So this is a human phenomenon. Everything you've heard about them is human phenomenon. So I want you to at least be willing to get rid of everything that you've been told about what extraterrestrials are. I only know my experience of them, which, as you know, my first experience was incredibly frightening. And the only reason that it was frightening is because I couldn't explain what was happening. Looking back on it, absolutely nothing negative happened to me, other than when something took over control of my radio and did impossible things with the radio in response to my verbal questions and even my thoughts. It was so frightening to me because it was impossible. But other than that, absolutely nothing negative happened. It was something that I sought out and chose for myself and wanted to have happen. And the thing that's been missing from my interactions with extraterrestrials has been the whole physical alien ship thing. Now, I can't talk about that. I don't know what ships, technologies extraterrestrials have, because I haven't experienced that part. So I can't talk about what I don't know. But what I do know is that these beings are not, at least the ones that come to Earth, the extraterrestrials that come to Earth, not the aliens that human beings create and present as extraterrestrials, because those aren't extraterrestrials. They are human created, whatever they are. But the actual extraterrestrials that come to Earth, that have the ability to come to Earth, are not three-dimensional beings. Not only are they not three-dimensional beings, if they do have a physical body, it is much less important to their interaction, their life. Their physical reality is much further down the ladder of importance. Their primary mode of interaction, again, the ones that come to Earth, their primary mode of interaction is on higher dimensional planes. And these are the beings that every religion talks about, whether it's angels, whether it's Nagas. Nagas are very powerful, wise, benevolent beings, by the way. They have nothing to do with the so-called reptilians. Angels, Nagas, fairies, sprites, gods in some cases, demigods, earth spirits, of course, elves. All of these are names for higher dimensional beings. That's it. So when you think of higher dimensional beings, you can now be willing to see them in a different light. They have acted in these ways as guides for humans. They have acted like elves, angels, because we were not ready, or we were incapable of comprehending, especially, hundreds of thousands of years ago, most humans didn't even understand that we lived on a globe. Most humans believed that we lived on some flat thing somewhere, and the stars were things that, revolved around us. And so from that mindset, when you experience a higher dimensional being, you're going to see it through the filter that you can imagine. And you're going to imagine things like elves and sprites and fairies and angels and all of that. And that's actually not what they are. They are that. I mean, everything that is ascribed to those beings, they are that. But they're actually just people like me and you that live on higher dimensional planes, which gives them a seeming supernatural abilities. But their abilities are only supernatural in our dimension, because they're able to do things that three-dimensional beings can't do. But if we were to shift up to their or any higher dimension, we would immediately become supernatural beings in the third dimension. And that's all that's happened with spiritual masters who gain siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I, siddhi, which means supernatural powers. Spiritual beings, spiritual humans who have gained supernatural powers have at the very least tapped into higher dimensional properties, which gives them seemingly supernatural abilities. And that's it. Many of these beings are your ancestors. These are people that were humans, that lived on this planet. You yourself have been these beings before in previous lives. You are destined to become them in future lives, or maybe even in this life. So the theme here is higher dimensions. Now, I had to get cracked open. When I reached out and physically sought to create a connection with whatever these were, I didn't know what they were, but I said, if these beings exist, I have to experience them. I have to. I was frightened of it, but I had to do it. I mean, you only live once. So I had to get cracked open. And that was simply done by me being, there was a lot of energy put into me, which destroyed my reality. You guys watched me go through that. I'm now on the other end of that. And, or at least, most of the way through that. And my interactions with these beings is that there are some definite limitations that I have. My ear is still closed shut, as my right ear, as a result of that, because everything I've experienced falls in line exactly with the scientific explanation of what would happen when beings from different dimensions tried to communicate. And the limitations that you have between beings of different dimensions, according to quantum physics, is exactly what I've experienced. The only thing that quantum physics does not talk about is the intense emotional, the concentrated emotions that exist on higher dimensions. Because quantum physics is not spiritual. It's trying to reduce everything into physical components. And so they take the spiritual and the emotional and the psychological out of it. But when you add in the spiritual and the psychological component to the interaction, then what you have is each time you go up a level, when it comes to a dimension, the emotions are concentrated much more intensely. And the emotions that we're talking about are higher level emotions. So before I get to answering the question of how does the solar shift, why I think the solar shift is necessary for open extraterrestrial contact, is I'm going to share with you again something I heard Joe Dispenza say. You know me, I don't quote other people very often. And if I do, it's either because I'm trying to destroy their arguments or because I respect what they have to say. And I have a pretty high standard of respect, so I don't quote a lot of people, which is why I don't like people coming on here and saying, hey, you should check out so-and-so's channel, and you should, because 95% chance I'm going to hate whatever they have to say. But Joe Dispenza was talking about his seminars where he was teaching meditations to open up the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland, the third eye, is one of the things that's necessary in order to perceive higher dimensions. And so during that, while he's doing that, he began to notice that there were these 9-foot tall beings of light that were hanging around, sort of sitting on the wall, watching what was happening. And then other people started noticing them too. And so he, I don't know how he communicated with them, but in some way he communicated with these beings, and he said, why don't you interact with us? And they said, because if we were to come down to your level, it would be damaging to us. And because we love ourselves so much, we won't do that. But we will observe, and if you can bring yourselves up towards our vibrational level, we will meet you halfway. And that's exactly apparently what happened in those in those seminars, where people were like, getting moved around by some unseen beings that were, physically doing things to shift things around. But that, what he described, is exactly my experience. And the CE5 protocols, which is very simple. I mean, it's incredibly simple. It's just basically meditation, just to put yourself in a state where you are no longer trapped in your 3D intellect, and you're in a state where you're connected to the concept of the unity of all things. That actually puts you in a multi-dimensional state. And then you simply imagine that you go out into the universe. And I've found this to be very helpful. I don't find it necessary anymore, but in the beginning I found it necessary that I had to at least leave Earth's orbit. And then I could make contact with, other beings. Now, again, I don't see them. I don't have that ability. Some people can go into these visionary states where they see these beings. I don't. I do my best to imagine what's out there, but I think my strength comes from my Ketu, which, as you know, Ketu doesn't have a head, but Ketu is shamanism, which means, you sense and experience things in your physical body. So I imagine, what the stars and the planets look like, and I do a horrible job at it. But really, I'm sort of bumping around out there by braille, and I go by feeling. And what I can do is I can feel, and probably I'm not the only person, but when I make contact, there's a very strong feeling that is not like any three-dimensional feeling, including emotions, including energy. I'm including things like chi and energy. These things are still three-dimensional things that you can feel. The energy that comes from these beings is not anything like that. And it's exactly the way Carl Sagan describes when a higher dimensional being communicates with a lower dimensional being. That thing explodes from within them and sounds like them, sounds like their own voice. And that has been my experience. And it absolutely shows the limitations I have in 3D to interact with 5D. They can see me perfectly. They have access to me the same way we would have access to a 2D world. But I don't have access to them in that way. And my experience of them is that they are absolutely not three-dimensional physical beings. And more than that, these beings have the ability to do things that don't even make sense in higher dimensions. They can access people who have passed. They can facilitate you interacting with, if anybody that you know has passed away, and it's part of your karmic path, these beings have the ability to usher those souls to you so that you can have an interaction with them. I'm having an ongoing interaction with especially my deceased mother, and she's continuing to heal the things that she did damage to me in this 3D life. She's continuing to do things to heal and put me back together in ways that would have been impossible. I would have taken those things to my grave, and they would have been karma that I would have taken into the next life. These beings have the ability to come and do things within you, flip switches inside of you that will get rid of lifetimes of karma. Now, you'll have to go through the emotional cleansing of that, which is not pleasant. But, again, it's like, barfing up bad fish. It's no fun when you're puking it up, but when you're done, oh my God, I feel so much better. These beings have access to all other conscious civilizations. In fact, they are from all other conscious civilizations around the world. And each planet has its own preferred dimensional vibration. So when we're going past a gas giant or, what seems like an empty rock, that's in the third dimension. But in higher dimensions, they're completely different. And they can be populated with billions of beings that you would never see in the third dimension. And each planet is a conscious being in and of itself. And each planet has its own preferred dimension that it wants to operate from. We are on the verge of planet Earth, our mother, planet Earth, shifting to a higher dimensional frequency. Now, she is a higher dimensional being, but she has created this three-dimensional piece of art that we call planet Earth. She has now decided that that can be lifted up to the next level. And the sun has a huge part in that. And the sun is also a conscious being. In fact, the sun may be considered to be the supreme deity in our solar system. It is perhaps the gateway of a supreme deity would be the sun. And the sun, if you want to try, you can communicate with the sun as well. Now, I don't know what your experience will be like. My very limited experience directly communicating with the sun is that the sun communicates through a pulse. I've never experienced anything like it, but just was it today? Just today, I sought to communicate directly with the sun, and I communicated. I said hello, and the sun literally pulsed at me, and there was a communication in the pulse. It was a very beautiful, loving communication, and it was love on the highest level. So, we live in a universe that is filled with conscious beings who all live in different dimensions and all interact in different ways with each other. And we are a giant organism working together. So as it stands, even people like myself who've done, at least tried to get their energy pushed up to that next level. As long as we're in a three-dimensional state that we're in, it's pretty much impossible to have any real contact with extraterrestrials. And that's why the majority of CE5 experiences are limited to people looking at the flashing orbs that appear. And a lot of people don't realize that while that's happening, there are higher dimensional beings seeking to communicate with you, and the best way you can do that is in meditation. So when you go into meditation, that's the easiest way for them to communicate with you. But even then, a lot of people don't see it. I didn't. First 2 times I did CE5, I was completely clueless. I was walking around and they were there trying to talk to me, and I couldn't see them or hear them or feel them. It took the third time before I was cracked open enough to experience it. So this solar flash event, based on what little information I've had, I believe will be a pulse. I don't believe it's going to be a solar flare, all this nonsense out there talking about it's going to be, some coronal ejection. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. Maybe it will be. Of course, I don't know. But I think definitely it will be a pulse that comes from the sun. Whether it's a repeated thing or not, I don't know. But I think what the end result is that the Earth herself will be vibrating on a level where, like Joe Dispenza's scenario, we will be lifted up in that halfway mark. I will be very interested to see what happens, because based on, again, my communications with them, the stuff that is being communicated to me is so fantastical. It's hard for me to comprehend, even in, if I was to live in a magical world. The fantastical elements of it are, I really have to, I have to come to a place of even more belief in all of this before I can even embrace all of the things that seem to be coming to me about, what can be possible. And I'm specifically talking about for me. They're saying, what is going to be possible for me? And I'm having a hard time accepting that. So I don't know what it's going to be like for everybody else. But while I don't know if we will hit 5D or not, I think at the very least we will be in a much higher dimensional phase of, between, 3 and 4D. Because again, we are in 4D. Time is the fourth dimension. But it's going to be necessary for us to be able to get past that barrier. Between 3 dimensions and 5 dimensions, there's a barrier. And that barrier is pretty much inflexible. And in 3D, it is much easier for people to operate from lower vibrational emotional states: fear, anger, violence, insecurity, self-hatred, which again is what the cabal runs on. The deep state is run on fear, violence, control, greed, all of those narcissistic traits. And so we're going to have to upgrade it so that whether or not these negative feelings can survive after the solar shift, I don't know. But we definitely have to be pushed up to the next level. And one of the first things that's going to go is going to be the misunderstanding of what extraterrestrials are. We're not going to see them as these 3-dimensional beings that fly around in 3-dimensional ships that, use tractor beams to pull people up through, their roof and that kind of stuff. And we are going to have access to things we don't have access to now. Past lives, future lives, access to communication to people that have passed, access to higher dimensional expressions of ourselves. So you'll be able to communicate with yourself on higher dimensional levels, because you are only, as I said, you are only one preferred probability state for your higher dimensional self. And it is in the 3rd dimension, which is a very isolated dimension. But in the new Earth that we're going to experience, we will have access to more and more of that. And the real interesting question for me will be, how far can humans progress? Like, can human beings in this new Earth have the ability to become what we would consider to be, supernatural beings? These spiritual masters that were able to do all of these crazy things, like, instantly transport themselves, be in 2 places at once, create things out of thin air. Are human beings going to be able to do that? It seems like that may be a real possibility. So I'm going to open it up for questions, but before I do that, I just want to remind you that for the month of September, I have made a commitment to do live streams of the HUUL mantra, which again, in my meditations, that has come to me as the new vibration for the coming Earth. HUUL is going to switch her vibration to HUUL. And what I've learned by this is that when you chant this mantra, HUUL, not only are you sending love to Mother Earth, not only are you opening your own heart chakra and rising your vibrational level, but you're also sending waves of love to our sun, which in the ancient tradition was our mother as well, the mother sun, that gives life to planet Earth. So when you chant that mantra, you are sending her love and stimulating her to want to give love back. So that pulse that she sends, when she does that, is going to be an act of love to us. It's going to be a very loving, healing act for you in particular. Whoever you are, she has your number, so to speak. She knows every living being on planet Earth, just like Mother Earth, of course, knows every living being on planet Earth. And she's going to specifically send you a huge pulse of love that will change your DNA, that will change your vibration, that will reconnect you to your soul on a deeper level. You'll have access to things you've forgotten about who you were, which you normally have access to when you're in between lives in higher dimensions. And we're going to be in a state that right now, if we were to experience ourselves in this new earth, we would experience, like if you saw your future self, you would see yourself as a being that was in between 3D and 5D. That's my guess. We'll see. We'll find out. So I encourage all of you to, let this play in the background. If you're not doing anything, let it play in the background and let it, fill your space. Chant along with it. Lie down, meditate. Let it go into your body, into your cells, into your DNA, and also share it, on your social media, Twitter, Facebook, because the more people that chant it, the faster the pulse will come. So that's, I don't have any expectations about anything, I don't need for anything to happen. I'm just simply wanting to give this gift to Mother Earth and to the sun and to my fellow humans. And, that's it. It's just a gift that I want to give to everybody so that we can all be, happier and more fulfilled. And so the more people that experience it, the more effect it's going to have, obviously. All right, so that's it. I'm happy to take questions. This is a question and answer, which means that if you write the word question in all caps, just the word question, and then write your question in normal script, I will answer it if it's an honest question. I would love to hear your feelings. And I'll go ahead and take a look and see if there are any questions here. All right. Let's see, we've got Thundra says hello. And you can check out her website, thundra.thunderwizard.com, thundra.thunderwizard.com. She's one of my astrologers, and she has a bunch of other cool stuff that she does. She's got Spirit Lounge is grace.thunderwizard.com, and she is one of my rune readers, and she is a powerful healer herself. She did a distance healing on me and was very helpful. Natasha, it's not a question. Duke of Lightning, honest feeling. I feel defeated. Okay, so this is a good lesson. So I appreciate the feeling here. You say, I feel defeated. People around me don't have any interest in changing their own probability. Wife, dad, and a few others only wish I would just be normal. I refuse to just go along. So Duke of Lightning, I don't know if I know you, have we interacted, but your main problem here, based on what you've said, first off, I understand your feeling. I share that feeling. I relate to it. I would like for people to change, but If you remember when I was talking about your preferred probability state, your preferred probability state is a very important experiment in consciousness that is being done by your higher self. So when you run into somebody else who is not, and first off, let's just assume for argument's sake that you know what is best for your wife and your dad and a few others. That's a whole other discussion. But let's just assume for argument's sake that you are correct, that you know what they need and what is best for them. And when you come to them, and of course I can tell by the way you talk that you've come to them, they haven't asked you. They haven't said, hey, Duke of Lightning, what do you think is best for me? What do you think I ought to do? They didn't do that. You came to them and you started telling them what they ought to do, or you started telling them the thing that you're into that they haven't asked you about, right? I already know that just by reading it. But let's assume for argument's sake that you're right, that you know what is best, and you go to them and you start sharing from a place of love, wanting to heal and help, and they start telling you basically, stop, just be normal, just leave me alone, stop telling me what to do. What's happening in that moment is that you are going up against a ninth dimensional being. You're going to lose. Because when you try to change somebody, when you try to forcibly change somebody's preferred probability state, you are in your third dimension. You're not in your higher dimensional self. You're not coming from your soul. Because your soul says, oh, that's what they are? Okay, that's good. I'm happy for them. In other words, you don't walk up to your dog and start trying to teach your dog how to play chess. You don't, because it's a dog. Your dog loves you. Your dog, if it could, it would play chess just to please you, but it can't. It's a dog. Doesn't have opposable thumbs, doesn't understand the concept of the king or the queen or the pawn or the rook. It doesn't understand any of that. You're wasting your effort trying to teach a dog how to play chess. And in the same way, trying to change somebody's three-dimensional preferred probability state that is coming from their higher dimensional self means you're walking into a laboratory. And in the laboratory, there is a higher dimensional being, a ninth dimensional being who is experimenting in a probability state with your wife, your dad, whomever. And they really want to understand what it's like to be in 3D. What happens when in 3D you are an alcoholic, a drug addict, a minister, a teacher, whatever. Whatever it is that your thing is, a shaman. That ninth dimensional being wants to know what happens to consciousness in that preferred probability state. So probability states, by their definition, are limited. So when you go up against somebody that hasn't asked for your help, and you start trying to tell them what they should do, or in a nice way, hey, you need to check out this, or like when a Christian comes up to you and says, you need to turn your will and your life over to Jesus. They think they're doing you a favor, but what do you say? God, leave me alone. I'm not a Christian. I don't want to do that. When you start telling somebody else that they need to change, you are going up against a God. And that God is going to win. You're going to lose. That person has to want to shift their probability state. If they don't want to do that, there is literally nothing you can do that will change that. Now, here's the part you don't realize. You're being extremely selfish because you're not accepting them for who they are. You say they're not interested in changing their own probability. That's right. And they aren't required to change their probability state. They're not required to do anything that you want them to do. They're not even required to love you. They're not required to do anything. So your desire to change them is not coming from your soul. It's coming from your fear, from your lower three-dimensional vibrational state, which has now taken this spiritual concept and manipulated it in a way so that your ego and your selfishness can operate from a higher perspective. When you say, my wife, my dad won't do what I want them to do, it's really what you're saying. Because you're excited about your understanding about spirituality and how you can change, and that's your deal. That's your thing. And it's not fair of you. Because again, it's not fair of trying to get your dog to play chess and, beating the dog and yelling at it because it doesn't know how to play chess. It's not fair. The dog's going to get hurt. It's not going to want to be with you anymore. Your dad and your wife aren't going to want to hang out with you if you keep trying to change them. So you say, I refuse to just go along. Well, why not just not try and force onto them how they should be? They're telling you they want you to be normal because they want you to back off. They want you to leave them alone. Why can't you just be normal? You don't have to share any of this with anybody. I only share what goes on with me on my YouTube channel because that's what I do, but I don't go out in public and pull people aside and say, hey, you need to go and meditate this certain way and communicate with higher dimensional beings. I mean, they'd lock me up for that, and they'd be right to do so. It's abusive. So Duke of Lightning, that is an abusive thing you're doing. If your wife and your dad are abusing you, then you can leave. You don't have to be around them. You don't have to have them in your life. Okay? So, go and check in with your soul and ask your soul, how can I love my wife unconditionally? How can I love my dad unconditionally? How can I let them have their own trajectory in this experiment? Because when they wake up, they'll text their higher dimensional self, and then they'll open up and they'll see and they'll change. And until that, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Just like there was nothing anybody could do to tell me, a year ago that we lived in the world that we live in. I mean, I was about to get the experiment put into my arm. I was that close. I mean, that's how far away I was to my reality now. And there wasn't anything anybody could say that was going to change that. So, anyway, you get what I'm saying. I'm sorry you feel that way. I understand that feeling, but you're coming at it from a perspective, a strategy that's not helping you. All right, Caleb Spears, honest feeling. It felt great today. Had the mantra playing via my car, and I spent the day working at the park with it playing in the background. So much peace. Thank you for sharing that, Caleb, and I'm happy to hear that it was healing for you. All right, so you say what I said. Duke of Lightning says what I said describes him and his wife. For the others, they seem to be offended by my choices. Again, they're only offended by your choices because they know about them. Are you one of those people, you say, my choice is to eat. So are you one of those people that goes around telling everybody, like proclaiming from the rooftop, I'm vegan, meat is murder, I don't drink, I don't drink. But I don't go around telling people, I don't drink, that's horrible for your body. I don't go around to people I don't know and say, I don't do THC, that destroys I don't go around telling people any of my own personal choices. It's none of their business. So why are you so available that everybody sees your personal choices? You could get away with eating or not eating certain things without anybody knowing. Again, there's some need you have to rebel and show people who you are, and then you get to have an excuse to feel attacked and misunderstood. But if you're comfortable with your choices, you don't care what anybody else does, and you don't care if they know what you do. Right? So anyway, meditate on that for a while. I don't see any other questions here. All right, so this might be the end for today, which is fine because I'm quite tired. So as always, going up here, thunderwizard.com, that is the preferred method that I'm aware of. That is the fastest way to shift your energy to make yourself ready for this coming shift. That may be coming very soon. So we've also got courses.thunderwizard.com. You can take a look at that. All of my books and everything else, which will probably be, who knows how relevant those will be in the coming days. And then of course we got the highest, this stuff, the Maoshan stuff, that stuff. Okay, I don't know what that is. I'm going to block that. Yes, good word. I'm only interested in questions and feelings, so I'm going to remove that. I don't know what that means. All right, so the Maoshan, this stuff, I imagine in the coming 5D Earth, I'm going to be teaching a lot of that because that's where you get connected. It's where you get connected in 3D to 5D energies. Now I understand why, all the years I was practicing it, why it was so powerful and seemingly so magical. And now I know the science behind it. So this is going to be something I'm going to be teaching in person in the next world because it'll be people, the average person will have use for it. Whereas when I was practicing it, 30 years ago, the only people, the very rare breed of people who did it were people who were really into high-level spirituality and were interested in fighting evil spirits and being able to handle it. And there was a very short, the list of people who were willing to do that were, about this big. But the new world, there's going to be a lot of cleansing. And so people will want this cleansing energy, which up until now has been used to fight against negativity. All right, so that's it for me, guys. I wish you all the best. Somebody says, anyway, okay, that's not a question. That's it for me, guys. I'm going to go relax and, take a big, long night nap. And before I do, so I'm going to put the mantra back on once I'm done from here, and that will be streaming again. Share it with anybody that you think might want to hear it and might want to chant it, because again, the more people that chant it, the faster it will come. That's it for me. I wish you guys all the best. I love you all. If I've done or said anything that's been harmful or offensive to anybody, know that my desire is to be helpful in my own way. All right, that's it. I will see you guys all next time.